In the Shade of the Qur'an by Sayyid Qutb, translated by M.A. Salahi and A.A. Shamis for World Assembly of Muslim Youth. Surah 105, Surah Al Fil, the elephant.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألم تر كيف فعل ربك بأصحاب الفيل ألم يجعل كيدهم في تضليل وأرسل عليهم طيرا أبابيل ترميهم بحجارة من سجيل فجعلهم كعصف مأكول.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. Have you not seen how your Lord dealt with the people of the elephant? Did He not cause their treacherous plan to be futile and send against them flights of birds, which pelted them with stones of sand and clay? Thus He made them like devoured dry leaves. This surah refers to a widely famous incident in the Arabian Peninsula which took place before the commencement of the Islamic message. The incident shows very clearly how Allah protected the Holy Land, which He willed to be the focal point of the last enlightenment, the cradle of the new ideology, from where it was to begin its blessed and holy march to exterminate ignorance from all corners of the world and to establish in its place Allah's infallible guidance. The various reports on this incident relate that after the Abyssinians had expelled the Persians from Yemen and established their rule there, the Abyssinian governor of Yemen, Abraha, built a superbly luxurious church in his area, giving it the name of the Abyssinian emperor at the time. He did this after he had witnessed the love and enthusiasm of Yemeni Arabs, which were the same as those felt all over the Arab land to the Kaaba, the holy mosque at Mecca, with the aim of making them forsake their attachment to the mosque of Mecca and turn instead to his new luxurious church. But the Arabs did not turn away from their holy house. They believed themselves to be the descendants of Abraham and Ismail who built the house. For them, this fact was a source of pride in line with the tradition of taking pride in their forefathers. Besides, vain and hollow as they were, their beliefs were, in their eyes, better and more profound than those of the people of earlier revelations, the Jews and the Christians. They knew how the latter beliefs were conflicting and futile. As a result, Abraham made up his mind to pull down the Kaaba in order to achieve his objective of turning the Arabs away from it. He therefore marched at the head of a great army equipped with elephants. In the front was a very big elephant which enjoyed special fame among Abraha's men. The news of Abraha's march and his objective traveled in the Arab land, and there spread amongst the Arabs very strong feeling against the destruction of their holy house. A nobleman of the royal family of Yemen, called Tu Nafar, tried to stop the Abyssinian governor, calling on his people and other Arabs to fight Abraha and defend the holy house. Some Arab tribes joined him in a battle against Abraha, which Tu Nafar lost before he was taken prisoner. Later, while Abraha was on his way, he was attacked by Nafil ibn Habar al-Khatami, who had mobilized 2 Arab tribes as well as troops from other supporting tribes. But Abraha won the battle again and captured Nafil. Nafil then agreed to act as a guide for Abraha to show him the way in the Arab land. When the Abyssinian governor approached Taif, a number of his leaders went to him to say that the house he wanted to pull down was in Mecca and not at Taif. They did this in order that he would not destroy the house they had built for their idol Allat. They also provided him with a guide to show him the way to the Kaaba. Then, on arrival at Al-Mughamas, a valley midway between Taif and Mecca, Abraha dispatched one of his commanders to Mecca, where he looted some belongings of the Quraysh and other Arabs, including 200 camels which belonged to Abdul Muttalib ibn Hashim, the chief of Mecca and the Prophet's grandfather. Quraysh, Kinana, Hutayl and neighboring Arab tribes gathered to fight Abraha, but then they realized that they stood no chance of winning, so they did not proceed. Then Abraha sent a messenger to Mecca to meet his chief and convey to him that the governor of Yemen did not come to fight the Meccan, but to pull down the house. If they left him to accomplish what he had come for, he would be pleased not to cause them any bloodshed. Abraha also ordered his messenger to bring with him the Meccan chief if the latter did not propose to fight. When the messenger communicated his master's message to Abdul Muttalib, the latter said, "By God, we do not want to fight him, and we have no power to resist him. This is God's sacred house, built by his chosen friend Abraham. If he protects it against him, it is because the house is his, and if he leaves it to him to destroy, we cannot defend it." Abdul Muttalib then went with the messenger to Abraha. Ibn Ishaq said that Abdul Muttalib was the most handsome, charming and attractive person. When Abraha saw him, he felt much respect for him. He felt that Abdul Muttalib was too noble to sit beneath his royal bed, but at the same time, he did not wish to be seen by the Abyssinian sitting with him on his royal bed. So he came down and sat with Abdul Muttalib on the carpet. Then Abraha ordered his interpreter to ask his guest what he wanted. Abdul Muttalib said he wanted to request the king to give him back his 200 camels which were looted by his commanders. Abraha ordered his interpreter to tell Abdul Muttalib on his behalf, "I admire you when I first saw you, but when I spoke to you, I was disappointed. Do you come to talk to me about 200 looted camels and forget about the house, which is an embodiment of your and your forefathers' religion, and which I have come to destroy? You did not even say a word to persuade me to spare it." Abdul Muttalib said, "I am only the master of my camels, but the house has its own lord, who is sure to protect it." Abraha snapped, "It cannot be defended against me." The Meccan chief said, You take your chance." Abraha returned his camel to him. Abdul Muttalib went back to the Quraysh and told them of his encounter with the Abyssinian commander and ordered them to leave Mecca and seek shelter in the mountains surrounding it. Then he went with a few personalities of the Quraysh to the Kaaba, where he held the ring on its door in his hand. They all prayed hard to Allah for his help and protection of the house. Abdul Muttalib is reported to have recited the following lines of poetry in his prayer. Our Lord, a creature protects his property, so protect yours. Let not their cross and their might ever overcome your might. If you are leaving them to destroy our house of worship, then you surely have something in mind. Abraha, on the other hand, ordered his army to march with the elephants to complete the mission. But just outside Mecca, the renowned big elephant sat down and refused to go any further. The soldiers exerted all effort to persuade the elephant to enter the city, but their efforts were in vain. This incident is in fact acknowledged by the Prophet when his she-camel Al-Qaswa sat down some distance away from Mecca on the day when the Hudaybiyah peace agreement was concluded. The Prophet said to those of his companion who claimed she had become mulish that she had not, and that mulishness was not part of his nature. But the Prophet added, she has been prevented by the same wheel which debarred the elephant from entering Mecca. On the day of the conquest of Mecca, the Prophet said, Allah protected Mecca against the elephant, but he allowed his messenger and the believers to conquer it. Its sanctity today is the same as yesterday. Let those who hear this convey it to those absent. Then Allah's will to destroy the Abyssinian army and its commander was fulfilled. He sent groups of birds to stone the attackers with stones of sand and clay, leaving them like dry and torn leaves. As the Holy Quran tells, Abraha suffered physical injuries. The remainder of the army carried him on their way back to Yemen, but his limb began to separate from the rest of the body, and he started losing one finger after another until they arrived at Sana'a. Abraha died after his chest was broken apart, according to various reports. Versions relating to this event vary with regard to the description of those groups of birds, their size and the nature of stones, and the manner of their effect. Some of these versions adds that smallpox and measles broke out in Mecca in that year. Those who are inclined to limit the scale of miracles and imperceptible phenomena, and who seek to explain all events as resulting from the operation of familiar natural phenomena, prefer to explain this event as an actual outbreak of smallpox and measles among the army. They further explain that the birds could have been flies or mosquitoes carrying germs. The word birds in Arabic refers to all that flies. Imam Muhammad Abduh, explaining this surah in his commentary on the 30th part of the Quran, says, on the second day, the epidemics of smallpox and measles broke out among the soldiers. Ikrimah said, it was the first time smallpox had appeared in the Arab land. Yaqub ibn Utbah said, that was the year when measles and smallpox appeared in Arabia. The diseases had an almost unparalleled effect on their bodies. Their flesh began falling apart. The soldiers and their commanders were horror-stricken and ran away. Abraha was also hit. His flesh continued falling off his body, finger by finger, until eventually his chest broke and he died at Sana'a. This is what different reports have mentioned and what is logically acceptable. This holy surah shows us that the smallpox and measles were produced by solid stone carried and thrown on the soldiers by colossal groups of birds which are usually carried by wind. It is in line to believe that these birds referred to in the surah were a kind of fly or mosquitoes which carries the germs of some diseases, and that the stones were of dry and poisonous clay which the wind carried and which might have stuck to the leg of those birds. When this clay touched any organism, it penetrated deep into it and then caused complications of wounds and injuries which upset the whole body, leading to the dropping off of the flesh. Many kinds of these powerless birds are, as a matter of fact, the most efficient troops of Allah, which He uses for the destruction of whomever He wills. That little organism called nowadays germ is within this classification. It gathers in big groups, the numbers of which is unknown except to the Creator. It is not essential for the manifestation of Allah's might that the bird should be as big as mountain tops or of a certain shape or color, and it is not essential for this manifestation that we should know the size of those stones and the way they work, for Allah has troops of all kinds. In everything He has a sign attesting to His unity, as the saying goes. There is no force in the universe but is subject to His power. To that tyrant Abraha who wanted to destroy the house, Allah sent birds carrying smallpox and measles. Both he and his people were destroyed before entering Mecca. That was a grace and a blessing from Allah bestowed on the neighbors of His sanctuary, in spite of their polytheism. Allah wished to protect His house until He sent the one who would protect it with the force of faith and ideology, that is the Prophet. At the same time, it was a punishment from Allah inflicted on His enemies, the people of the elephant who wanted to destroy the house without any reason to justify the action. This can be taken as a basis for understanding the surah. Nothing else can be accepted without logical explanation, even if it is authentically reported. The divine power will be exhibited more strikingly when those who maintain their might by recruiting elephant, the biggest four-legged animal, should be destroyed and crushed by a tiny animal invisible to human eyes. Otherwise, this is certainly greater, more fascinating and miraculous. That finish the point of view of Muhammad Abdul. Neither this assumption of smallpox or measles resulting from clay infected with germs of these diseases advanced by the well-versed Imam, nor the opposite one described in some narratives that the stones thrown by the birds split the heads and bodies of the Abyssinian and went through in them to tear their bodies apart, leaving them like remnant of dry leaves. Neither of the two explanations outweighs the other in manifesting Allah's might, and neither needs to be taken as a better explanation of the event. To me, both are the same with regard to their possibility and the exhibition of Allah's power. Whether the natural phenomena known and familiar to man operated to destroy the people Allah willed to be destroyed, or His purpose was accomplished through some divine rules and phenomenon of which man has no knowledge, are in my view exactly the same. The divine rules of nature are not circumscribed by the boundaries of man's knowledge or what is familiar to him. For man knows of the divine rules of nature only a fraction which Allah has put before him and which is proportionate to his capacity of understanding and thought nourished by his experience through the ages. Hence, the so-called miracles are part of the rules of nature laid down by Allah, but they are miracles only when measured by human knowledge and experience. Hence, there is no need for unease or doubt when faced with a supernatural event, nor is there any need to seek an explanation for it. If the reports mentioned it are authentic, or if there are enough reasons based on what is in the text to suggest that it was supernatural and did not comply with known natural law, that a certain event should run according to familiar natural laws is not, in my opinion, less significant or less effective than its following supernatural laws. The natural rules familiar to man are in fact miraculous when weighed in the measure of man's power and abilities. Sunrise is a miracle, though it occurs every day, and the birth of every child is superhuman in spite of its happening every minute. If anyone wants to challenge this, let him try to devise a birth. The employment of birds of any kind to carry ground stones infected with germs of smallpox and measles, then to throw them at that particular place and time to afflict the raiding army with its epidemics at the moment when the army was about to overwhelm the city and destroy the house is indeed a great miracle. That Allah's will should have been realized in that way would comprise several miracles with each as a clear manifestation of Allah's might and will. Had that course been followed, it would not have been less significant or less striking than sending a certain kind of bird carrying unfamiliar kinds of stone to afflict human bodies with a peculiar sort of affliction at that particular time. These two causes are the same, both are supernatural and superhuman. As for the events in question, the opinion advocating an unfamiliar, superhuman cause carries more weight. This opinion visualized that Allah sent groups of unfamiliar birds carrying strange stones which cause extraordinary affliction to human bodies. To accept this opinion does not necessitate the acceptance of those narratives which describe the birds in a most striking and fascinating way, similar to the description of other incidents which betray exaggeration. The general tone of this surah and the circumstances of the event tend to support this opinion. Allah had a scheme for the house. He wanted to preserve it as a refuge for mankind where everyone finds peace, and to make it a gathering point for the followers of the new faith to march out in security in a free land, not subject to any external force or to any tyrannical government which might try to smother the new message in its cradle. Allah also wanted to make this event a permanent lesson, clear to everyone in all ages, so much so that in this surah it reminds the Quraysh, even after the prophethood of Muhammad, peace be on him, of this grace he bestowed on them, and give it as an example of how he protects his sanctuaries and preserves them. There is no need for any attempt to impart a familiar image to this event that is exceptional and singular in essence and in circumstances. This is all the more so, especially when we take into consideration the fact that what we know of smallpox and measles and their effects on man does not fit in with what was reported of the effects of the incident on the bodies of the soldiers and their commanders. Neither of the two diseases caused the falling off of man's limbs, fingers by fingers and organs by organs, and neither of them caused the breaking up of one's chest. The Qur'an's narrative suggests very clearly that this is what happened. Thus he made them like devoured dry leaves. Moreover, the report by Ikrimah and Yaqub ibn Utbah does not state that smallpox hits the army. Neither report says anything more than that smallpox broke out that year for the first time in the Arabian Peninsula. Neither of the two men suggested that Abraha and his army particularly fell victim to these epidemics. Besides, if the army only was hit with the disease while the Arabs around remained safe, that is, if the birds were meant to hit only the armies, then this is again preternatural. Since the event is in any case supernatural, why trouble ourselves in limiting it to a certain explanation only because this explanation is based on what is familiar to human senses? The motive of the rational school of which Imam Muhammad Abduh was the leading thinker, to limit the field of the supernatural and the imperceptible to our senses when explaining the Holy Quran, are commendable and understandable. These schools tried to explain such events within the bounds of the known and familiar natural laws. It was confronted with a superstitious trend which tightened its grip on the minds of the masses at that time. Moreover, it was facing a flood of legends and Talmudic narrative with which books explaining the Quran were overburdened, while the fascination with modern technology and science and doubt in the principles of religion was reaching its zenith. The rational school tried therefore to preserve the place of religion, taking the standpoint that whatever it says is compatible with reason. Hence, the school strive to keep religion pure from any association with any kind of legend and superstition. It also tried to establish a religious mentality which understood the natural laws and recognized that they were constant and infallible, and which attributed all human and universal functions and operations to these natural laws. This mentality is in essence the Quranic mentality, for the Quran refers man to natural laws as they constitute the permanent and infallible rule which organizes individual operation and diverse phenomena. But resisting the pressures of superstitions on the one side and fascination with technology on the others, left this stem on that school. It became extra cautious, tending to make the familiar natural laws the only basis of the divine laws of nature. Hence, the Quranic explanation of Sheikh Muhammad Abduh and his two disciples, Sheikh Rashid Rida and Sheikh Abdul Qadir al-Mughabi, show clearly a strong desire to reduce the greater number of miracles to only the more familiar of Allah's natural laws rather than the supernatural. They explain some of these miracles in a way that would be in line with what is called rational, and they are excessively cautious in accepting what is imperceptible to human senses. But with this understanding and appreciation of the environmental factors behind this trend of the rational school, it may be noted that it has gone too far in overlooking the other side of the comprehensive concept which the Quran aims to implant in the minds of the Muslim. This is that Allah's will and power are absolute, limitless, and go far beyond the universal rules and laws He ordained, whether familiar to man or not. This absoluteness does not accept the human mind as a final arbiter. Neither does it accept the limits of the human mind as binding in such a way as to classify as probable only when may be acceptable to human reason, and to demand rational explanation for all which may be unacceptable to it. This demand is frequently stated by the advocates of this school. Moreover, the divine laws of the universe are not only those familiar to man. Indeed, what is familiar to man is only a fraction of these laws. Both these and the unfamiliar laws are the same in manifesting the greatness of the divine power and the exactness and precision of Allah's design. Nevertheless, we must be well guarded against superstition and at the same time reject any unfounded religion with conscious moderation, so that we do not succumb to the influence of particular environments nor be motivated by the need to resist a common tradition of a certain age. There is a safe rule for approaching the Quranic text which may be appropriately stated here. Vis-a-vis, we cannot approach what the Quran states with prejudiced minds and preconceived ideas, whether generally or in relation to the subject matter of the statements under study. The opposite is the right way. We must approach the Quranic statement in order to derive our concepts and formulate our ideas from them. We must approach the Quranic statements in order to derive our concepts and formulate our ideas from them. We must approach the Quranic statements in order to derive our concepts and formulate our ideas from them. What the Quran states is final as it is, for what we call reason and its adjudication on what the Quran relate of events in the universe or in the history, in the world of man or of the imperceptible, is no more than the net result of our finite human existence and experience. Although this reason is, in essence, an absolute force, not subject to or limited by individual experience or event, yet it is, after all, confined to our human existence. This existence does not reflect the absolute, as this belongs to Allah. The Quran comes from Allah, the absolute, and is binding on us in the sense that whatever it states is the basis of our very rational concepts. Then no one can say about a certain statement of the Quran, it is unacceptable to reason, so a logical explanation must be sought for it. As the advocate of the rational school frequently say, this does not mean that we should accept superstition. It only stresses that human reason is not the arbiter of what the Quran states. When the expression of a Quranic text are clear and straightforward, that determines how our reason should approach it, in order to formulate our views concerning its subject matter as well as regarding other universal facts. Now we proceed to discuss the surah itself and try to understand the significance of the story. Have you not seen how your Lord dealt with the people of the elephant? It's a question which draws attention to the wonders involved in the incident itself and stresses its great significance. The incident was so well known to the Arabs that they used to consider it a sort of beginning of history. They used to say, this incident happened in the elephant here, and that event took place 2 years before the elephant year, or this dates to 10 years after the elephant year. It is well known that the Prophet was born in the elephant year itself. This is perhaps one of the fascinatingly perfect arrangement of the divine will. The surah then is not relating to the Arabs something they did not know. It is a reminder of an event well known to them, aiming at achieving something beyond the actual remembrances of it. After this opening note, Allah goes on to tell the rest of the story in the form of a rhetorical question. Did he not cause their treacherous plan to be futile? Which means that the design of the people of the elephant were useless, incapable of achieving anything at all. They were like someone who lost his way and thus could not get to his own destination. Perhaps this is a reminder to the courage of the grace Allah bestowed on them when He protected and preserved the house at a time when they felt too weak to face the mighty aggressors, the people of the elephant. Such remembrance may make them feel their disgrace when they persist in denying Allah after He has helped them out of their weakness. It may also curb their conceit and heavy-handedness in their treatment of Muhammad and the few believers who supported him. Allah destroyed the powerful aggressors who wanted to pull down His house, the sanctuary. Allah then may destroy these aggressors who tried to persecute His messenger and suppress His message. The Quran superbly portrays how the defeat of the aggressors' design were brought about, and sent against them flights of birds, which pelted them with stones of sand and clay. Thus He made them like devoured dry leaves. The birds were flying in groups. The Quran used a Persian term, sijil, which denotes stone and clay, to describe the substance with which the birds struck the aggressors. The dry leaves were described as devoured to denote that insects or other animals have eaten them. It is a vivid image of the physical shattering of the Abyssinian soldiers when they were stricken with these muddy stones. There is no need to go into such explanation as that it was an allegorical description of the destruction with smallpox or measles. The significance of this event is far-reaching, and the lessons deduced from mentioning it in the Qur'an are numerous. It first suggests that Allah did not want the polytheists to take the responsibility of protecting His house, in spite of the fact that they held it in deep respect and sought security in being its neighbors. When He willed to preserve the house and make it clear that He Himself was its protector, He looked after it. He left the polytheists to be defeated by the Abyssinian. The divine will then directly intervened to repel the aggressions and preserve the sacred house of Allah. Thus, the polytheists did not have the chance to hold the protection of the house as a favor they did to Allah or as an act of honor. If they did, they would have been prompted by the fanatic impulses of ignorance. These points give considerable weight to the argument that the divine will of destroying the aggressors was accomplished through preternatural rules. This direct intervention by Allah to protect the holy house should have prompted the courage and the rest of the Arabian tribe to embrace Islam, the divine religion, when it was conveyed to them by the Prophet. Surely, their respect and guardianship of the house and the paganism they spread around it should not have been their reason for rejecting Islam. Allah's reminder to them of this event is a part of His campaign against them and is drawing attention to their amazing, stubborn attitude. The event also suggests that Allah did not allow the people of earlier revelations, represented in this case by Abraha and his army, to destroy the sacred house or to impose the authority over the Holy Land, even when it was surrounded by the impurity of polytheism and the polytheists were its custodian. Thus the house remained free from any human authority, safe against all plotting and designs. Allah preserved the freedom of the land in order that the new faith would grow up there completely free, not subjected to the authority of any despot. Allah revealed this religion as the force which keeps under its fold all other religion and all mankind and takes over the leadership of humanity. This was Allah's will concerning His house and religion. It was accomplished long before any human being knew that the Prophet who was to convey the new message was born in the same year. We feel contented and reassured when we realize this aspect of the significance of the event. We know the wicked ambitions of international crusading forces and world Zionism concerning the Holy Lands. We realize that these forces spare no effort to achieve their wicked ambition. But we are not worried, for Allah, who protected His house against the aggression of the people of earlier revelation, when its custodian were polytheists, will protect it again, if He wills, and will protect Medina, the city of His messenger, against the plottings and designs of the evildoers. The third aspect, the event refers to concerns the reality of the Arabian situation at the time. The Arabs did not have any role to play on the face of the earth. They did not even have an identity of their own before Islam. In the Yemen, they were subjected by either the Persian or the Abyssinian. If they had any government of their own, it was under the protection of the Persians. In the north, Syria was subject to the Byzantine rule, which was either direct or in the shape of an Arab government under the protection of the Byzantines. Only the heartland of the Arabian Peninsula escaped foreign rule, but this also was in a state of tribalism and division which deprived it of any weight in world power politics. Tribal war could drag on for 40 years or more, but neither individually nor as a group did these tribes count as a power in the eyes of the neighboring mighty empires. What happened with regard to the elephant aggression was a correct assessment of the real forces of this tribe when faced with a foreign aggressor. The real force of this tribe when faced with a foreign aggressor. Under Islam, the Arabs had, for the first time in history, an international role to play. They also had a powerful state to be taken into consideration by the world powers. They possessed a sweeping force that destroys thrones, conquers empires, and brings down the false, deviating, and ignorant leaderships in order to take over the leadership of mankind. But what facilitated this achievement for the Arab for the first time in their history was that they forgot their Arabism. They forgot the racial urges and fanaticism. They remembered that they were Muslim and Muslims only. They carried the message of a forceful and comprehensive faith which they delivered to humanity with mercy and compassion. They did not uphold any sort of nationalism or factionalism. They were the exponent of a divine idea which gives mankind a divine, not earthly, doctrine to be applied as a way of life. They left their homes to struggle for the cause of Allah alone. They were not after the establishment of an Arab empire under which they may live in luxury and conceit. Their aim was not to subjugate other nations to their own rule after freeing them from the rules of the Byzantine or the Persian. It was an aim clearly defined by Rabi'i ibn Amir, the Muslim messenger to the Persian commander, when he said in the latest headquarters, Allah ordered us to set out in order to save humanity from the worship of creatures and bring it to the worship of Allah alone, to save it from the narrowness of this life so that it may look forward to the broadness of the life hereafter, and from the oppression of other religions so that it may enjoy the justice of Islam. Allah ordered us to set out in order to save humanity from the worship of creatures and bring it to the worship of Allah alone, to save it from the narrowness of this life so that it may look forward to the broadness of the life hereafter, and from the oppression of other religions so that it may enjoy the justice of Islam. Then, and only then, did the Arabs have an identity, a power, and a leadership. But all of these were devoted to Allah alone. They possessed the power and leadership as long as they followed the right path. But when they deviated and followed their narrow nationalistic ideas, and when they substituted for the banner of Islam that of factional bonds, they came under subjugation by other nations. For Allah deserted them whenever they deserted Him. He neglected them as they neglected Him. What are the Arabs without Islam? What is the ideology that they gave or they can give to humanity if they abandon Islam? What value can a nation have without an ideology which it may present to mankind? Every nation which assumed the leadership of humanity in any period of history advanced an ideology. Nations which did not, such as the Tatars who swept over the east, or the Berbers who crushed the Roman Empire in the west, could not survive for long. They were assimilated by the nations they conquered. Though in the ideology the Arab advanced for mankind was the Islamic faith which raised them to the position of human leadership. If they forsake it, they will no longer have any function or role to play in human history. The Arabs should remember this well if they want to live and to be powerful and to assume the leadership of mankind. It is Allah who provides guidance for us lest we go astray. Subhanallah, walhamdulillah, wa la ilaha illallah, wallahu akbar, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi al-aliyyil azim, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi al-aliyyil azim, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi al-aliyyil azim. Ya Fattah, Ya Razzaq, Ya Wahhab, Ya Ghani, Ya Mughni, Ya Khadim, Ya Daim, Ya Ahad, Ya Wahid, Ya Samad, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, Ya Hayyu, Ya Qayyum, Ya Rabb, Ya Zal Jalali wal Ikram, Ya Rabb, Ya Zal Jalali wal Ikram, Ya Rabb, Ya Zal Jalali wal Ikram.